Got me singing out.
All right. Welcome everybody out to Robbins Podcast number 2 here at the old Robbins shop on the old bench.
The old bench.
We have Skylar, our install manager, with us. Drew, our service manager.
Howdy.
Steve Robbins, our owner. I'm Richard Williams. I'm the sales manager. And this podcast is produced by our friends at Zia Media Group. So welcome everybody out today.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alive.
I got a question for you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, am I up? If you're on time, you're late.
Who gave you that piece of advice?
Foster parents. Yeah. His name's Tony. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but yeah, he gave me that piece of advice. He'd always tell me that all the time. He was one of those early bird type people, and it's always stuck with me for a long time. So it's pretty cool.
That's a good one. I'm still thinking. I got to think of theirs.
You got that don't eat yellow snow?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's good advice, though.
It really is.
If you're looking for
that'll
stuff.
carry you
That's
through.
good stuff.
That's tough, dude. That's a tough one.
Come
Gotten
on.
a lot of advice.
What's the best piece of advice you'd give somebody else?
If you're on time, you're late.
Never stop learning. I think that's a good one. I would give, in that I got an advice from a coach. Never stop learning. Don't get me wrong. There's times where I've not necessarily followed that advice, but I would say never stop learning.
I got one. I'm gonna say check your ego.
Ooh. Who told you that one?
Gotta check your ego. Jocko, dude.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Jocko says it
The
a
man.
lot.
Yeah.
The man.
Yeah, you got to
That's
check
right.
the ego. Yeah.
The man.
I think that your ego factors into a lot of things, and sometimes it's not always right. So you gotta check it.
You might not always look where you're going, but you'll always go where you're looking.
That's a good one.
Nice.
Dang, you just came up with that on the fly. That was majestic, dude.
Yeah.
No, I wrote that one down the other day. I heard it. It was a good
Oh,
one.
yeah. That's solid. Yeah, that's very
That's a
solid.
good one.
You wrote it down. Now you remember it.
I do.
Yeah.
That's right. If you were thrown on a deserted island for a year and you had 5 minutes to grab 3 items, what would you take?
I mean, obviously, you need a lighter, a tent, and some sort of weapon. Probably like a machete or something.
I got a fishing pole, a lighter, and a knife. If I'm on an island, there's going to be something around there. So I'm going to say no. And the hook. The hook comes with the fishing pole. It's already on there.
It's assembled fishing pole.
Yeah, it's assembled, line and all.
Okay.
I'm probably going to take a bow, some flint and steel, something to start a fire. And my wife, to be honest with you. If I get to grab stuff, we kind of cool to hang out on a deserted island with my wife.
Yeah.
I think he did say items. I don't know if that
Yeah.
counts or
Yeah.
you know.
I'm gonna take a weapon. I'm gonna take a water purifier and a lighter. Something to start
Run out
fire
of
with.
gas with that lighter at some point.
Yeah.
How long
I
are we
would
going to
say-
be on this island?
I'm keeping it. He said a year, but so I'm keeping
the fire.
a fire the entire time. That fire's never
it
going out,
rains.
and if it does, I have my lighter. So,
If it rains,
huh? Do you make a shelter for it?
Mm-hmm.
I just realized something though. You saying that you
Purified
guys all
water
had
with-
really good ones, and I think I would die right off. I don't think I'm making it. I didn't do very well on the fly. Like, did we have time to think about it if that was a real scenario?
You got 5 minutes.
you got 5 minutes.
5 minutes to think about it?
Like they walk in your door and they say, "Or you're out of here in 5 minutes." What are you taking?
That's rough. The fishing pole was probably that was a really good one.
I don't know. Water purifier.
Yeah,
You
that
can
was
use
solid.
it
too.
sounds bad. You can purify it with fire.
Yeah, you can. You can boil it off, but you don't have a pot.
Ooh.
I forgot a pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can make a pot
Mm-hmm.
with my fire and clay.
Clay.
And clay.
Yes, sir.
Clay pot.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Solid. Okay.
Industrious.
What's a misconception that somebody has about you, or that most people have about you?
I would say that I'm not a person that jokes around a lot. Because unless I'm around somebody that I know, for the most part, I'm kind of standoffish, if you will. So, but once you get to know me, it's different levels. It's all,
Layers.
yeah, lots of layers.
Sometimes I wish I could go back to that stage when you didn't know me as well.
Good luck.
I would probably, mine's kind of like that. Like, I talk a lot. I'm very outgoing, but like when it comes to like making small talk with people I don't know, I'm very standoffish. Like I won't, like if I see people out in public that, you know, I may know from just here and there, I won't stop and make small talk. Hey, how you doing? I'm out. I'm leaving. I don't want to hang out and talk. So, where like if it's us or whatever, I'm just, the whole time, you know, I'm loud and obnoxious. So.
I think a misconception people have about me is that I'm nice.
That's wrong. Not you.
No,
Jail.
That's pretty nice.
I'm nice when I need to be, I guess. But yeah, I unfortunately, I'm brutally honest, is what people say.
Oh, yeah.
And so, right off the rip, people don't get that. But I think that over time, they they get the real Steve.
Steve's, his name should be Ego Check.
Check your ego.
Yeah.
That's why me and Steve get along so well, because my wife is brutally honest as well. So go home, get used to it, come to work, same thing.
It's like I never left.
I don't know. I don't know what I would say. What's a common misconception people have about me? I'm going to poll the audience.
Or you want our opinion?
Look, this is not how this goes, right? Because if we get stalled, we can't flip the script like that. You
I
know?
just did it. That's
You know
what
what
you're
I
going to do.
Who made him the host of this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's Eric.
Jesus.
Mm,
Help a fella out, would you?
misconception.
You're organized. Because you were not organized. You were organized chaos all the time.
All the time.
All the
baby.
time.
I think most people don't take you as being competitive.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
Very, very competitive. So,
yeah.
but you don't put that off. Very calm, very collected, but deep down, watch out.
He tried to
gonna
body
win.
slam me in the office the other day. I know.
I'm going to win tactfully and silently.
Nice.
All right. What's a common misconception people have about the HVAC industry?
About the industry as a whole.
As the industry as a whole, what's a common misconception in the industry?
Mm.
I'm going to jump in and say a common one that I kind of hear is like, oh, it must be nice. Like, that's a good industry. But it's really just like a very demanding industry.
Mhm.
Like for somebody that's looking from the outside in, maybe about joining or, you know, hiring in, transitioning, becoming part of the industry, that it's maybe a little easier than it really is.
I'd agree with that. If you can make it through the first year, you can probably make it through the rest of them. But that first year, physically, it's quite the change. We see quite a few people wanting to come in from different industries. If you're not used to working on roofs when it's 100 plus on the roofs all day, every day, it's probably something that's gonna take a toll on somebody for sure.
I think just like off of what Richard said, people don't like even on the service side, I think it's about the same. We show up in the heat, you know, when it's hot outside, we show up and people are hot and they're mad. We get them fixed and we leave as soon as we start cooling there. Oh, your house is cooled down. Okay, we're on to the next one into the heat. And then we do the same thing in the wintertime whenever it's cold out. You know, we work in the freezing temperatures and then, you know, as soon as we get them heat up and running, we're like, okay, now it's time for us to leave. There's no comfort. It's super demanding, super, super tough that way.
I think how technically, like, it's ever evolving for us, but how much technical skill you need to have in our industry. I think that's overlooked quite a bit because it's not just one piece of equipment or a specific brand. It's a whole array that we go out and work on and either install or service side go out and fix the whole nine, and what it takes from residential all the way through commercial, the whole nine. I mean, I'll speak for myself, not knowing, and obviously I knew Steve and stuff before coming into the industry, but having no idea how much you have to have in your bank, if you will, on everything technical wise, from electricity to refrigeration to mechanical components, gas, the whole nine. There's a lot more to it that most people don't even realize.
And
It's just a box.
Yeah, you have to keep it in the bank because you'll use it for 6 months and then you won't use it for 6 months. So you better remember what the heck's going on at the end of it.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
I think as you think about that too, anything you do that's more demanding is more rewarding. So for me, it is anyway. Maybe not for everybody. Maybe everybody doesn't have that same perception, but for me, I get out of things what I put into them. So if you're going to, really put something into an industry that's physically and mentally demanding of you, you're going to get a lot more reward out of it. And no disrespect to any other industry, especially the oil field. We have so many oil field people around here, but Drew and Skylar came from the oil field, and I was laughing the other day because we were on that job, and Robert, or Risky, he was like, we got into a little bit of a difficult situation, and he was just joking, but he made the comment, I hear the oil field calling me. And so I just think about how physically demanding the oil field is, and then to hear somebody that's actually came out of the oil field make that comment it's just interesting. So,
And off the rigs too at that. I mean, that's some of the toughest work there is. So yeah, pretty awesome.
yeah, but it's a good industry. I think that's maybe another misconception people have is how rewarding and how in demand the industry is, and how it can really be a very good and successful career. And so if people are willing to stick it out and make the changes they need, it really can become a rewarding career. So a little plug out there to those people who are thinking that they want to make an industry change. We're hiring.
Always hiring.
Why are you guys whispering? Okay.
Yeah, we're hiring.
Yeah.
Listen, it was subtle.
Not out loud.
Okay, it was
Subtle plug.
subtle.
Nice.
All right. What else? Anything else? Any other common misconceptions?
Not anything I can think of right off the rip, I don't think.
What's one thing you find a lot of homeowners don't understand about their heating and cooling system? Misconception that a particular homeowner has about the system in their house.
I got a good one. That the 1-inch pleated filter is the best thing they can ever buy for their system.
That's a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. A 1-inch pleated filter is the best thing you can get for filtration, but the result is it's not the greatest for your system. It ends up blocking more airflow, causing more damage to a system than it does the benefits you get out of the clean air. So I think that's one of the biggest ones, right? And you look at the big box stores, they sell basically all pleated filters, and they got some very, very nice filters, but they kill blower motors.
Yeah. I thought about that too. I need to actually do more research. This is just an opinion that's I've kind of formed in my own mind. But I think that somebody somewhere took a marketing idea that we should sell these better filters because they appeal to people. But in the industry as a whole, it didn't apply to people's systems. It was applied as create cleaner air, but the filter was never a purpose to actually create cleaner air. It was to help keep your system clean and help keep the crud out of your system, let it flow good and perform at its max capability, which if your duct system is not set up right, and it's usually not, pleated filters are terrible.
Yeah. I think even along those lines, if you are going to run a pleated filter, it sounds crazy, but the 4-inch pleated filter is much better for airflow than your 1-inch, right? We're talking just surface area of what we have to pull air through. And that 1-inch pleated filter is probably the worst thing ever invented for an AC system, in my opinion. So.
That, and I'll piggy off of that with Steve. I mean, going to the big box stores, and much like anything else, that filter is really expensive. That's going to be the cat's meow for my system. It's going to be the death of the system just because it's too good of a filter. So
Probably has something to do with that. But another misconception is it's freezing up and ain't got no Freon in it. We need to add some more Freon in it. I mean, it's even guys in our industry, do that, but they don't know that it has something to do with their filter. It's got something to do with the coil being dirty. It's got something to do with sometimes not having a filter. So that's you kind of hear a lot of people say stuff like that. You see it on the internet from time to time. Just put some juice in it and we'll be good to go. It's not the case. Stop doing that.
yeah.
I think another one would be that a swamp cooler works when it starts raining. Anybody lives around here, come August, they know that a swamp cooler doesn't work when it starts raining. Yeah, and that's the tough part of it. The higher the humidity is, the worse the evaporative cooler is going to work. So,
Yeah, last year was the worst. We got many phone calls of
mm-hmm.
probably more so than any in history
Mhm.
that people are like, "Hey, my cooler's not working." And you show up, it's working just fine. It's just doing
Yeah.
all that it can, which is not much.
Mm-hmm.
I think another one is, speaking of filters, I change my filter once a year, whether it needs it or not. Just the old once a year filter changers. You adult once a year. Your filter probably needs a little more often than that. I'd venture to say, what do we recommend? Usually quarterly at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
minimum.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And then just based off of how dirty it's getting out quick. So,
I
what
think
else?
There's also another one, just as far as education piece goes. When somebody switches over from evaporative cooler to refrigerated air, I've had several people, I want to hang meat in my house. I want to get it cold, right? I don't, for one thing, when it's 70 degrees in your house and it's 100 outside, it's going to be plenty cool in there. But we risk that chance once we get certain return air temperatures and the conditions that work out. We're just going to freeze that thing up. So, depending on your system, yeah, I mean, my system at my house, I can run it down to 65, 66 degrees, but I've got the perfect setup on my house. And most people don't. And not that I run it down at that temperature all the time, but if I wanted to, I could. Most of the time, a system around that 68 mark, you're freezing that system up.
I had that on my paper. I want to ride that train for a minute. So let's talk about why we can't go down below that 68 number.
Okay. Talk about it right now.
Yep. Let's jump in there.
Well, for first, it's run times, man. Longer run time, more apt to freezing up. Like you said, if you have anything, like Steve said, he's got the perfect system, right? If you got the perfect system, then yeah, it'll probably run that way, but not forever, right? Because eventually, it doesn't matter how well it's insulated or whatever. You're eventually gonna, once that thing runs so long, you're just more apt to freezing up. And if anything interferes with that in any way, shape, or form, your filter's dirty. You don't have the right return air. You don't have the right supply air. You have a vent closed. You have whatever the fact may be, is going to throw a big wrench in the whole giddy up there. So you're going to end up freezing the system up. So, I mean, it's just extensive run times on, like you said, when it's 100 and 102 out in the middle of July, August, it's almost bound to happen. You're not going to get away from it, so.
Yeah. Well, your refrigerated system there's a lot to it. There's a huge science to it. There's a deep understanding of how everything works. And, the training stuff that we do here with Steve and everything else, pressure is temperature and temperature is pressure. So a lot of that plays into how your system operates and how the refrigerant goes through the cycle. So if you're bringing in too cold of temperatures and on the return air side and everything like that, it's a direct correlation of what's going on the outside and coming back in. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and it's a big science and there's a lot to it, but it's not just cranking it down so you can hang that 4 quarters of meat. You know what I mean? There's a lot to it. So
I think just where we live, we're pretty blessed to have all 4 seasons. We're high desert, if you will, very dry. So it's pretty easy to cool our air. And so that does give us a chance to run those a little bit lower than somebody like in the South. I got a sister that lives in Louisiana, and it's a lot more humid. You get that moisture in the air, that's going to be a different effect on the system. So,
Yeah. I think a lot of people too, have a breakdown happen instantly. Freezing, you can unthaw and the system will continue to run again usually. But over time, the more and more you freeze that system, the harder it is on it, and it'll fail early in life, and compressors and all of that stuff, right? But that's what's hard too, is people just say, "Oh, I'll run it low, and if it freezes up, and I'll unthaw it, and then I'll keep running it low." But the more you do that, the more it hurts.
And I think people don't understand that. We don't tell you, "Hey, don't run it that low." Not for that one time you're going to do it. That's a different story. But soon enough, humans, we adapt. We start doing things like that, and we think that we can just run it that low all the time. And then that's when you start getting into trouble, because it may run like that at first until you don't change your filter, or until your blower motor or your blower wheel gets dirty or something of that nature. And then you can't move the airflow that you were intended to. And it just doesn't work out that way, so.
mm-hmm.
Ductwork plays another part of that, right?
Huge part.
Got to move air. You got to move air.
Part.
Colder you want it, the more air you got to move. So, let's see. Is there such thing as cooling?
I was going to throw this in the misconceptions, but I didn't want to get too deep off into it.
I'm ready. Let's go.
I would say no. I would say removing heat is
Yeah.
what you do. You don't put cold air in a house, and I mean, unless you put cooler air in a house with a swamp cooler. Sometimes if it's not raining, but with refrigerated systems, no, you remove the heat.
You're transferring heat.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's fun with some of our clients and customers that like to get a little bit more in depth. They're, more apt to wanting to hear the details. It's fun to get in with them about how a refrigeration system works and how a heat transfer works and all of that kind of stuff. So what do you think? Is there such thing as cooling?
No, I teach the class. Right? That's one thing that we get to talk about with all of our guys that are coming into the industry and the classes that we teach. Right? There's no way that we're going to add cooling. We just remove the heat. And so that's when if you do have refrigerated air, you go outside and that thing's throwing a lot of hot air out of it. Basically, we're pulling the heat from the house and then just removing it and transferring it outside, like Drew said. We're just relocating it in that position where it doesn't affect our comfort level.
And that's why, as we kind of think of that, right, common misconceptions are that coolers do work and like swamp coolers do work. But as you think about how refrigerated air works, it's able to take that heat from the house and take it out. And that's why refrigerated air works no matter the conditions, because we're taking the heat and pulling it out of the house.
Well, part of it, right, is with the evaporative coolers, we're taking in whatever the ambient temperature is outside and we're trying to cool that off and dumping that into the house. With the refrigerated air, we're just going to circulate that air that's already in the house. So we're not trying to overcome 100-degree air out there on that roof. We've got 70, 72-degree return air, and that's what we're conditioning.
Yeah, just trying to take it back down a little bit.
When I think too, another thing is trying to, you have couples that have lived here forever, and they finally, they're good to go and they get a new house or they decide to go refrigerated finally after having a swamp cooler for 40 years after their whole life. And then they still want to leave the windows open, after they go refrigerated. There's been several times we've had to go back and be like, hey, look, like it's supposed to be a closed deal. The more stuff that's sealed up in your house, the better off you are. Door, your outside window shut, your outside door shut, less light you can take in, the whole nine. So
yeah, talking misconceptions, I think another one is, well, I keep my swamp cooler because my utility bills are lower that way. And so what do you think? AC versus swamp cooler utility bills?
I mean, it might necessarily be the case. I mean, house to house, obviously that's different, but I don't know. I think differently, right? I'll pay any amount of money for comfort. So if I want to be cold all the time and every time I walk in my house and I'm satisfied that it's 70 degrees, and a swamp cooler obviously is never going to give you that. So I think, to me, I don't think necessarily, not in every case. You can't say that across the board. I think that's hard to say that one's cheaper than the other,
And I think I introduced this topic with caution, right? We don't want people to get the perception that we can tell you what your energy bills are going to be.
No.
There's a lot of factors that go into where your utility costs are going to be. Utility costs themselves being one of them. As costs go up, that's something that can really determine, obviously, your bill. But in general speaking, right, the efficiency of AC systems have come up. So if you have, some of our older clientele who have had a swamp cooler for a lot of years and they're used to old, inefficient air conditioning systems, they've heard the horror stories. These new, more efficient air conditioning systems, I've had the comments made that they're similar at utility cost to swamp coolers. But again, it just depends household to household.
Right, and I think one of those deals is evaporative coolers work great in certain times of year, right? When it starts raining, unfortunately, it just doesn't. So that unit's going to run, in some instances, 24 hours a day, where your AC system is not going to do that. So, you get home, if you've got the old 6-way switch, you get home from work and it's probably going to be 80, 85 degrees in your house. You crank that on. If you've got a digital controller, that's great. But when the humidity starts coming, and it hopefully does every year, get out of this drought maybe. But there's going to be that instance where if you got a 1 horsepower motor, what are we pulling on amps on a 1 horsepower motor? 12, right? 12 amps running 24 hours a day. That's, as far as utility cost goes, that's going to be pretty pricey. And that's not counting the amount of water that you're trying to use and go out of that. Interesting enough, the very first house that I bought, it was an older home built in the early 70s. And when I moved into it, it had an evaporative cooler. I moved into that house in August, and it was hot, right? And I come home from working on refrigerated air systems all day long, and then go home to that. It just wasn't fun. And so for that first month, we got our utility bills, and then I ended up changing out and going to refrigerated air. And we talk about SEER quite a bit and the different efficiency ratings as they go along, but that was the lowest SEER rating that you could purchase at the time, and I put that one on, and my bill went up $20. So, I mean, that was 18 years ago. So, obviously, that was a 10 SEER system. And now the lowest that we can sell is a 14.3 SEER 2. So we're getting to that point where as far as cost of operation goes, we're very comparable.
What refrigerator was 18 years ago? Is that R12 still?
22.
Was it 22?
Mm-hmm.
Give him some credit.
Well, you said 18 years old. Dang. You're older than I thought. That's
It's getting great.
Why are you whispering?
It's good.
I try to be cautious there when we're designing systems for people, but it's still one of those things where I'm very comfortable saying utility costs are going to be comparable, depending on where you want to keep your thermostat and all that kind of stuff. It's don't be scared to get rid of your swamp cooler because you're scared that your bill is going to be $800 a month, because it's not.
No, I mean, too, I think it's one of those, as far as education too, there's a lot of factors, and I think that's what you guys do, Richard, a very good job of, when the home was built, what are the windows like, stuff like that kind of plays into it too. But yeah, I think it's one of those that we've had customers that put mini splits in at my old house just down the road, and he had a swamp cooler, and we put mini splits in, and he keeps it at 70, 69 degrees, and it went up $40 a month. You know what I mean? And so it does vary, but I think it just depends. There's a handful of factors too to be aware of.
Well, and the best part about that is it doesn't matter if it's raining, sunny, windy. None of that matters. The wind, you're not bringing dirt into your house. I mean, you're not doing any of that. When you go refrigerated, it's like there's so many upsides to it besides, the initial cost or whatever it is. If it's $20 more a month on your utility bill or whatever it is, or even if you go to saving money, right? It does happen in cases. So it's pretty interesting. There's so many upsides to refrigerated over a swamp cooler.
It's not too bad when the neighbors barbecue and they get that smell from your swamp cooler.
Yeah, I was going to say, you get to know what Ricky's cooking next door,
My favorite,
just sneak over.
The neighborhood skunk gets up there.
It's always bad.
Oh, Pepe Le Pew starts walking around, and the whole house smells like skunk.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up that way. I had a swamp cooler and let the old skunk go some nights, and then you turn the cooler off and you get to sit there and be miserable, so you don't have to smell it. Either smell it or you'll be miserable and hot.
Yeah.
One or the other.
I'd rather not be hot. I'll just embrace it. Yeah, you just, at that point, you just gotta let it go.
When is the best time to install a cooling system, a refrigerated air system?
Yeah, I would say in that first quarter.
First quarter, yeah.
The tough part is we get pretty busy in the summertime. And unfortunately, we'll get people that call in and want an estimate, and they're a couple weeks for the estimate. And then the install, they're, 2, 3, sometimes even in the worst case scenarios, 4 weeks out on an install. And so if you want to wait half the summer to get cooling, that's one way to do it. But the best time to do it is in that first quarter, January, February, March. And there's a misconception there as well that we can't install that stuff when it is cold, and we can. So
I think the other misconception that plays into that is, and we do all we can to take care of our customers. We're not perfect by any means, but the thing is, I don't want to make anybody wait any more than they like having to wait. Mm-hmm. It's a bummer for me to go out there and be like, hey, I know it's been two or 3 weeks since I could actually get here to give you an estimate. Now it's going to be another 3 or more weeks on top of that for us to come install it. And they're bummed. It's hard for me to deliver that news, so it's not like we're just sitting back laughing and enjoying ourselves, taking it easy. We're, you know, guns blazing in the middle of the summertime, trying to do all that we can. And so, you know, if I could tell anybody one thing, it would be get your estimates early and get your work done early. And that way you avoid that having to wait so long.
And if you think about it, I was just thinking about this. I had to describe this. Normally, unless you're Richard, you don't wait till you run out of gas to get more gas. So you don't ever want to be, you know, in the scenario and need something and the gas station be 5 miles down the road and you're hoofing it at that
There's
point,
one time,
you know?
okay, I was on the phone, forgot to stop at the only gas station for 40 miles.
Oh, pretty funny.
Or twice.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you don't want to. I mean, who wants to wait 4 weeks? You wait 3 weeks to get an estimate. You know, worst case scenario, 3 weeks to get an estimate. Worst case scenario, 4 weeks to get an install. It has happened before. And I mean, not only are we scheduled out that far, but sometimes it takes a while to get the equipment. You know, shipping and stuff dude, it's been a nightmare. So, it's definitely always, you know, early bird gets the worm type ordeal. You know, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You know. So,
what they said. Can't add much.
Okay, I'll throw one your way then, Drew. When's the best time of year to service your AC system?
A lot of that depends on, realistically, is going to be your outdoor ambient temperatures, right? There's certain things we can do to mask warmer temperatures. You know, we have a jacket and stuff we can put over the condensers to kind of help raise the head pressure and stuff like that to kind of simulate a warmer situation. But realistically, I would say if it's anything above 55, 60 degrees ambient outside, then it's on. We can simulate some stuff to be able to get it, to be able to check, to make sure everything's working correctly, your pressures, your refrigerant levels, the whole nine. But I would say anywhere between that 50 to 60 degree mark and above is ideal, because we can mask that, and then up from there is always good too. So,
You know, we live in a very heavy evaporative cooler climate, and so a misconception, right? You have to wait for it to stop freezing before you turn the water onto your evaporative cooler. And so people kind of get that mindset that I have to have that done in the spring, and that's not the case. If I if I could do my own, which I do, I'm going to do it in June or July when it's hot and that thing's working like a dog and it's working as hard as it possibly can. If I'm going to see an issue or if I'm going to see a problem, I'm going to see it then. Very hard to see those issues in April and May when the outdoor temperatures just aren't that much. Your indoor temperatures, there's not much load in there to overcome. So in my opinion, the best time to do it is in the summer when that thing's working.
mm-hmm.
So you can really get an idea of how well it's doing.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll paint it like, you know, if you live in town and all you do is drive around town, you're probably never going to need your high beams. And then as soon as you go on a road trip or something and you're out, you know, driving down the highway, now all of a sudden you realize I need my high beams. And so that's a lot of times like checking an AC system early in the year when it's very cool, you know, moderate outside. Yeah, I don't need my high beams right now. You know, it's just like driving around town. I'm not going to notice a problem until I absolutely need them. And that's when you're going to see that problem happen.
This
is your section right here. Service, maintenance.
What other misconceptions you have? There hasn't been more why we've been talking today. Things that you thought of.
I would say that some people say that every year they have to add refrigerant. It is what it is. That's not true.
Sir, you have a leak.
Yeah, there's other issues. You know what I mean? So realistically, if you have to keep adding refrigerant to a system, that's not normal. Yeah, it's a sealed thing. You know what I mean? It shouldn't have to add refrigerant every year, especially if it's an every year occurrence. You know what I mean? I've come across customers a lot. Yeah, every year we have to add refrigerant. Let me find out why. You know what I mean? So for me, that's not the case. Theoretically, you shouldn't ever have to, unless you have a leak.
Sure.
Then we got to find a leak.
Somebody is
no
taking
more
your
leaky.
refrigerant.
Yeah, no more leaky.
So it's the opposite of running out of gas. Every so often you have to add gas to your vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's nice to know.
You don't have to do that with the AC system.
I'm going to say maintenance on new equipment as well. I think that's one that like we talked, I think in the first one, where it's just because you get a new car doesn't mean you can't go in and get an oil change and stuff like that. It's just as important on new systems as it is existing ones that you've had for a while.
Not from a customer standpoint. I don't know if we're trying to stick to that, but kind of to bank off what we went earlier, a lot of the guys come in and they think that this is a easy, good paying trade that we're in, and kind of how we were talking earlier, we kind of got to do everything. Even a service side, install side. I mean, we got to know a little bit about carpentry. We got to frame stuff up. We got to know a little bit about electricity. We got to hook up a disconnect. We got to, we got to know a little bit about roofing. We got to roof in, roof jacks, whatever it is, put in flashings. We got to know, really, we got to know a little bit about everything. So there's a lot to know. There's a lot of knowledge gained that you can really use even around the house in your personal life too. People don't realize that it's a good way to kind of learn a lot of that stuff. If someone wasn't brought up, their dad didn't teach them things like that or whichever. It's a very handy thing to know. A little bit about plumbing, a little bit. We run a little bit of PVC, and when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit, not a lot. So, but yeah, it's kind of a lot, man. It's not easy by any means, but kind of like you said earlier, the more sweat and tears you put into it, the more accomplished you feel at the end of the day. So it's very, it's awesome feeling at the end of the day. You're working all day, you're in a hot attic, you're doing this and that, and then you are doing startup at the end of the day at an end of the install, and the house is 80 degrees and it drops 10 degrees in an hour while you're picking up and doing your stuff. There's really no better feeling than that. It's super rewarding, I would say.
So to wrap this up, I think we're coming to close to the end here. If you could put one plug out there for potential new customers, new clients, existing customers, existing clients, what would you say to promote them to think ahead and be prepared for whatever it might be? What would you say to somebody?
Don't wait. I think if you're wanting to, especially if you're wanting to go refrigerated and stuff like that, I would say don't wait. I say get on the ball and, get one of our comfort advisors out there and get it going. Like Steve said earlier, the last thing you want is 102 degrees and you have zero cooling, and you have to try and figure out a way to invest in something to either get you some cooling or something until we can get something in, or no, you're just wasting money at that point. I would say that, like Skylar said too earlier, the early bird gets the worm on this stuff.
I think a lot of people, if we're talking just air conditioning, right? The heater's the same thing, but a lot of times in the back of their mind, they're like, man, next year I probably need to replace that. I might think about replacing that next year. They do that for 2 or 3 years, and this thing's, if it's an evaporative cooler, pretty rusted up. If it's a furnace, it's just old. And a lot of times it's in the back of our mind that we need to do that. And then we just wait till that last minute to do it because we want to milk every last minute out of that system that we can. But I think that, that theme might just be if you're going to do it, you might as well do it. And we, unfortunately, in the last 3 years, have seen price increases that are astronomical. We've never seen these before. So it's some of those deals where I don't know what's going to happen this year. And that's not necessarily a scare tactic. I've been thinking it was going to level out for the last year and a half, and it hasn't. And so that's been one tough thing is we'll bid a system last year and then turn around and have to rebid that this year, and it's a significant increase. And so that's kind of tough to swallow and tell the customer. But that would be mine anyway.
It's a major bummer deal as far as that goes. Just I think mine would be along the same lines. Is a common misconception is that people just use their system till they can't use it anymore. And on average, we see most systems will have an average life of 18 to 20 years, depending on exactly what it is. But you're somewhere in that range. So I'll meet some of these, older people that own homes, and they're like, I've had this furnace in here for 40 years. You think I got a good life? Like, yeah, it's time. It's been time for a long time. Yeah. And so just knowing that, hey, I've gotten good use out of it, and at some point, like a vehicle, it's got to be replaced. And so if it's time, it's time. And the more you wait, the more potentially expensive it is, the more regulations we may incur as far as government standards, things that have been passed down to manufacturers and to us that we have to abide by. And so the longer you wait, the more potential there is for things like that. So.
Just off of that real quick, I have one, but I mean, you can't see a crack in a heat exchanger, huh? I mean, realistically, you could be breathing in CO the entire time. Yeah, it may still be working and it's chugging along, but that don't mean it's right, you know. So there may not be any telltale signs, but that doesn't mean it's right. But let's see. I would say maybe that something people don't know that'll bring them in, like that'll encourage people to do it, because I don't know a whole lot of people that just have, you know, however much money, whatever, $10,000 sitting in their bank account to put heating and air conditioning in their house. But I know I don't. But just, I mean, we offer financing. I don't know if a lot of people are known, or if that's, you know, but it's and it's good financing of that, and then rebates on top of that. I mean, that's a huge deal. Kind of like Steve talked about, with prices going up and up and up. It's like, you know, there's no time better than the present. I mean, good deals don't always come around. And normally we try to get those, we try to encourage people to buy earlier so they're not stuck out in the heat, because we genuinely care. Like, we don't want you to have to wait 6 weeks to get heating and air conditioning in your house. So, we try to sweeten the pot just a little bit in kind of the off months when it's kind of that in between season. So, but financing, man, that's where it's at.
I think that's a great point, right? Normally we see in this, you know, the industry itself kind of slows down in the late summer, early spring. And so that's where you'll see a lot of these manufacturer rebates come out, and taking advantage of those.
Love it. You guys have been great. It's a good time.
No,
Podcast number
Always
2.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Call that a wrap for today. No, appreciate everybody tuning in and watching this. And again, thanks Zia for producing it. And
for the pizza.
Yeah, and
Appreciate the pizza. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
we love the pizza. If you can't tell, we're all got some wide angle lenses on the cameras.
True.
Yeah. My camera's in the hallway.
Yeah.
Exactly. Though.
All right. Till next time, Robbins Podcast out.